Well, hey guys, welcome back to another Mancast episode 5 of season 2. We are journeying through the Sermon on the Mount. Thanks for continuing to climb up the mountain, and it's been fun to learn together in this form, but also in around tables. So we're continuing, and we're starting off Matthew chapter 7. So we're bringing this thing home a little bit, getting towards the end, and today getting to talk about a little bit of a spicy meatball because I think in church life, man, you know, church is full of people, and people are, what does the proverb say? Where there are oxen, there are messes.
Yeah, there's poo.
There's
poo in the barn.
There's poo in the barn. So in church, there are people, and where there are people, there are messes. And I think a lot, you know, there's a lot of opportunity for messy relationships in church, but Jesus is going to hone in on a topic here that really causes a lot of mess. And he says in chapter 7, verse 1, he says, "Don't judge, or you will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will also be judged. And with the measure you use it will be measured against you." And I don't know about what you've seen or what your experience is. I would love to hear it. But it feels like in our culture, in our current moment, we just stop at the "don't judge me." We kind of forget the rest of that line, and we just love to say, "Don't judge me." And we leave it there. Have you seen that, or how does that play out?
And it's all been amalgamated with even the concept of love. Is love is you let me do what I want to do when I want to do it, and that's not real love.
Yeah.
And what Jesus is telling us here, he's given us a key to relationship, and he's introducing us to grace, to this thing of God's not fair.
Yeah.
And in the Old Testament, God was a God of judgment. He was a God of vengeance. And we think that's harsh and cruel, but we need a God. You don't want to worship a God who's not fair and righteous and who holds people accountable. It would be frustrating for us if there's like atrocities happen and we didn't know it one day there would be an accountability for.
Yep.
Awful, horrible. The things that you read and you're like, child abuse, sexual abuse, like these things are just horrifically horrible.
Yep.
But what Jesus is saying here, he's saying, it's really the golden rule, right? This is where we get to do unto others.
You would have them do unto you. Yep.
And what we've done in our culture is we've applied, do unto me what I don't want anyone else to do to me. Right? I want to be able to do whatever I want to do. I want to be separated from really, and what it is it's an identity and a worldview that's based on completely on an individual identity and not a group identity.
Yeah.
Group identities have what hold culture together. And so there's cultural mores, these kind of things, these are key understandings of communities of, in order to have a meaningful relationship, I can't hold you to a standard I'm willing to do. Later on, Jesus says, "Hey, Pharisees, you're walking around with a giant log out of your own eye and you're trying to get the splinter out of your brother's eye.
Yep.
First, take the log out of your eye before you're so consumed with everyone else's behavior."
Yep.
And so what Jesus is inviting us to is not that we have to sit around and hold accountable. We don't have to hold everybody accountable. That's not our job. Our job is to trust God with accountability. And in our practical day and age, I don't know if you're going to ask this, but this "don't judge me," there's the secular outside the church mentality, but then there's also the in-church side church. Paul talks about this. This is not just a Jesus thing. This is the New Testament church has to wrestle with this. And they're trying to, how do we judge the culture? How do we judge those in the church? How do we judge those outside the church? In I think it's 1 Corinthians chapter 5:12, Paul says, "What business of yours to judge the world, to judge people outside the church? But it is your job to judge people in the church." That's accountability.
Let's dive into that a little bit because it feels like, and again, I don't want to make my personality is make big sweeping statements, so I don't mean to, but it does seem like we have become as a culture way more comfortable judging those outside of the church than we are judging those inside of the church.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And that's why the world looks at us and says we're hypocrites.
Yeah.
So I just want you to think about this. Why would we hold somebody who's outside of the church, who has never agreed to live to a moral standard or to live to the scriptures. They never have agreed to it.
Yeah.
And we judge them and we hold them
To the same
that.
standard. Yeah.
That's not fair.
No, they didn't sign up to play by those rules.
Yeah, it would be, you're playing a game that they don't know the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just sit around and you get mad at people. Can you imagine playing on the playground and, you're playing soccer. You're playing by the rules of soccer and everybody else is playing by football.
Yeah.
You'd be getting all kinds of flags and red cards, and it would be so confusing. You'd be like, what's going on here? What game are we playing? And that's what the church does to the world. And that's why they're deeply confused, because one person's playing American football and the other playing international football. And it's just, are we throwing red cards or flags? Like, we don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
So where the church has lost its voice is we've put all of our judgment externally,
Mm-hmm.
and we haven't held ourselves accountable.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's in the church, and the Apostle Paul talks about this over and over through 1st and 2nd Corinthians, it says, if you're a leader, if you're in the church, you have to say, I'm agreeing to live to the standard of Jesus, so that means I have to be accountable to it.
Yeah.
And so loving discipline, loving correction, I'm agreeing to live to the standard of God. I want what God's best for me. And so we have to hold each other accountable. Now, It gets confusing. It's challenging. How do we do it? Because I don't do a moral inventory of everybody who shows up on Sunday. I'm not looking at the list and be like, what was your web browser this week? How did you behave at work?
Yeah.
All these that's the difficult part of it. So I think this is why we need groups, right? Because there's the larger church scale. So some of the most challenging and hurtful things when people talk about church hurt. If anybody's been around the church, they talk about church hurt. And most of the time, church hurt is this judgment applied without grace.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to learn to do that. And I think in groups, it works much better in smaller groups.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little off here, but this is, it's so important, because I want to be very clear. God holds us to a standard, and we're called to live to the standard of God.
Yep.
And practically, I think this is what I would say to this, is most of us, we're our own worst critics. And what we see in other people that drives us crazy, and why we want to hold them accountable, is because we don't have the ability to hold ourselves accountable, and we're broken in that same place.
Yeah. And you said that, and it's like the way it's the speck of sawdust in our own eye, but we notice, like, I love the way you said that. We notice in other people, we see ourselves in other people, and then we kind of get riled up because we recognize that we hate it about ourselves.
Oh yeah.
But Jesus even says, like, hey, examine that a little bit. Like last episode, you talked about the why, right? So if you see something that you want to judge in somebody else, like, why does that get you so riled up? What is it in you? Like, deal with that a little bit. And I think that's the grace that Jesus is inviting us to. Don't condemn yourself because of it, but examine that.
And grow through it. Mm-hmm. And I think even the hard part is what confuses us in all of this is even we have our indicator of what tells us what's right and wrong is broken, like the passages where your heart is wicked and deceitful above all things. So even the thing that's in us that's designed by God to tell us what's right, it's broken and manipulative. Yeah. So we can come up with a jacked up thing where I can look at somebody and, you're awful, this is the worst thing ever. And then I can step away from that and do that exact same thing. Yeah. And somehow justify it. Yeah. Like we're so broken. Even our hearts that are that judging mechanism are broken in us. Yeah. And that's where we need the grace of God, and where we have to ultimately say that God, Jesus himself, is the one who will judge all things in the end. So we have to just walk through that with great grace and wisdom. And I think the other thing, just in practical relationship in a church, we need a little bit more resilience to be a little bit more gracious for people. Matthew 18, which talks about conflict, Jesus gives a model for how to deal with conflict, especially it starts with a brother or sister in the church. Yep. And he says this, so if somebody offends you, go to them privately and say, hey, you did this, it hurt me, it offended me. And a lot of us forgo that step. So what do? You hurt me. Everybody else. I'm going to judge you. I'm going to go tell everybody else. And Jesus is like, that's not the way to do it. You go to them directly. And then if it doesn't come to resolve, then you bring some other people, 2 or 3 people with you. And you say, hey, this thing happened. We need to work through this. And I'm telling you, like the first one, 80+% of problems are solved.
Yeah.
The second one, when you bring other people, I think then you're to 90+%. And then the third one is if that's still not resolved, then you bring leaders in the church.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, you're like 99% of all resolved issues. And then if all of that doesn't work, then Jesus says that you give them, you can't be in relationship with them, or there needs to be a separation of relationship. But a lot of people apply that stuff to a lot of different things. And I think you have to really think to what's the end of that. And so here's what you have to say. If you're going to judge somebody, if you're going to be offended, if you're going to be hurt, you have to say, is that a big enough deal that if they don't deal with it, I'm going to boot them out of it. I'm going to cease relationship with them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting spot too. Cause you're sitting there talking and I'm thinking, it seems that we judge the harshest those that we know the least.
Yeah.
Like when we
you don't know somebody's story.
Yeah. When you don't know their story. And so you said like, okay, so we're going to judge them or we're going to boot them out. You know how much more difficult it is to boot somebody out if you're actually in relationship with them?
It's really
if you
hard.
know their story.
Yeah.
And so we judge those that we don't really know. And I think, isn't there an invitation to get to know their name and their story instead of making the judgment? I guess it comes down to this. There's a difference between judgment and discernment. You could judge somebody's behavior and not like it, or you can discern, I wonder why that's the behavior. I wonder where that's coming from. And you try to use a little discernment, like what's going on in their life that shaped them? What are they struggling with? What are they dealing with?
Yeah. And then I think just another super practical thing, there's just some people that don't click.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You just don't like people. And so I think a lot of times we get all confused with like, it's godly thing. I just don't like this person.
Yeah.
And
So
just because they're in the same church does not mean you have to be BFFs.
Yeah, so you're saying that it's okay for people to worship in the same building and not see
Vote
eye
the
to
same
eye?
and vote. Yeah, we're not all going to be all these things. But part of it is that so two things I would challenge us to is one is Jesus needs to change your heart towards loving people, right? And the judgment thing in us, then you have no grace. Because my guess is if you judge a lot of people, guess what? You're judging the crap out of yourself.
Yeah.
And it probably really sucks to be you.
Yep.
And it's hard for you to change and it's hard to love others because you just are frustrated with yourself all the time. And the way you've learned to deal with that is take it out on others.
Yeah.
You're probably not fun to be married to, and you're not fun to be the father.
Yeah.
So go see it, get therapy, talk to a pastor, grow through that. So that can be one strategy. Or the other thing, you need some resilience that says, maybe I'm not so delicate. And the nature of relationship is people will say things, they'll offend you. I need to have some grit and fortitude and strength. And God's my defender. And every little thing that Jonathan says to me, I don't need to make a huge deal of because here's what drives me crazy. People are like so petty. Mm-hmm. And so like, oh, you do that. And it's like, I didn't. So then the only option, if according to the teachings of Jesus, is we have to separate relationship.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh gosh, we talked about this last episode, but I'm doing a bunch of reading about marriage right now. And there's 4 things, we'll talk more about these here later on, but the number one thing for marriage is that if you want to have a successful marriage, you have to have less grievances and more fun. And most of us in any relationship, we want grievance.
Yep.
You grieve at this. And so it's just constant grinding against stuff. And relationships are meant to be fun.
Yeah.
Right. So you gotta let things roll and just be like, yeah, they said that. Hey, I'm gonna give them grace that it was a bad day.
Laugh at it.
Now, there's something you don't want to be an abuser. You need to have boundaries
Sure.
something consistently over time. That's different than one little, joke someone said or something. So we need toughness, we need wisdom, we need discernment. But here's the other thing I would just say. You have to love everybody, but you don't have to like everybody in the church.
Yeah. I love that.
As the pastor, I will tell you, I love you all, but there's some of you I don't like. I'm going to be really honest.
I like you all, I swear. No.
I get some emails from people. I'm like, I see people coming who are like, they want to talk to you. And I'm like, ugh. But hi, how you doing? So good. It's my job is if they're going to give me the right to be their pastor, I have to love them.
Yeah.
And so our maybe personalities that are different,
Yep.
my petty grievances, maybe they don't approach me just right. And I wish they affirmed me and told me 3 great things about me before they gave me some unhealthy feedback. And that's part of why I've had to grow. For years, pastoring, Jonathan, when people would give me feedback, I'd feel like a douchebag. I'd just be like, I probably shouldn't say that. I'd feel really bad. I need to edit that one out. But I just feel
put a little bleep on that one.
But that's how I'd feel. It's just, I'd feel like, oh, I'm the worst.
Yeah.
I suck. And I had to retrain my brain to realize if somebody is coming up to give me feedback, that means they care so much. The easy thing to do would just to be walk away and never say anything.
Yep.
And so I've had to learn, like, I wanted to judge them for feedback, but I had to learn they might not do it right, but it's be out of a heart of care, and they love the Lord and they want to see things. They totally might not do it right, but it's coming from a heart of care and concern and love and affection. And that has so shaped me. So it's not my personal brokenness that's being reflected on somebody who's coming and giving feedback.
Yep.
And then it's these things, like I remember one of my mentors said, there's a little truth in all feedback.
Yeah.
And that's why it stings sometimes.
Yeah.
Growing up as a pastor's kid, I remember an older, wider pastor told me this. It says, Tim, listen to everything, but let it go in one ear and out the other, and let the Holy Spirit catch what you need to catch.
There you go.
That's been a helpful skill.
Yeah.
And that makes just working with people so much easier.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just grievance. I'm judging. I'm on the judging patrol.
Yep.
And I don't think that's what Jesus tells us, but it's a big enough deal that it's in the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
That he's talking about. You have to navigate this. And Pharisees, he's really talking to the Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, you've misjudged the law.
Yeah.
You think that the law is this thing that is a qualifier or disqualifier. You're in, you're out. And Jesus is saying, no, it's grace, and God's love is available for everybody, and we get a chance to respond to that.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a much, I don't know, maybe it's a higher stand, but it takes the pressure off when you think, I am called to love everybody. I'm not called to like everybody. You can love those people that you don't like. Love and like are not mutually exclusive to one another. And we can separate those things. And
it doesn't always have to be forever. Like there's seasons of my marriage where I haven't liked my wife.
Yeah.
But our love has been enough to say, okay, we're going to get through this season.
Yeah.
And so there's just seasons like that. And if we have that pressure, I've got to love everybody. That's unfair for you. It's unfair for anyone. Like our kids are adult kids. I have always loved our kids, but there's been seasons where there's like, and that's real. I'm not diminishing our kids at all. That's part of nature, human relationships. And so we don't let those short season, short circuit, long-term meaningful relationships. And most of us bail out of relationships.
Yeah.
We don't walk through that hard stuff. We don't learn to let love grow to like. And when like, how do we go back to love? How do we lean it to mature through that? We just judge, we bail out, we get frustrated, and we're on to the next. And so all the people in our lives are consumable.
Yeah.
And that's not what Jesus talks about the church. That's not what the Apostle Paul talks about the church. And he says, we're going to have to spend eternity with each other.
Yeah.
So I want you to keep that in mind, especially when we're talking about inside the church. You're going to have to spend forever with these people.
Yeah. I would say, I love that you said that was a perfect word. It's, guys, don't bail. Just don't. I mean, there might be seasons where you need to move on.
Absolutely.
But if that's your first instinct when
it gets hard,
like I'm just going to call it what it is. That's weak. That's not what you said. That's
weak sauce.
Yeah, that's not being resilient. And
there are a bunch of super weak Christians because and right now in our cancel culture, if you don't agree with me, whatever, I'm just bailing out.
Yep.
That is not Jesus the way. And how do we have? And there are people who love and trust Jesus who think differently than you.
Yep.
And you may not like with them. You might not like how they think. You might not like how they vote. It might even not be in your framework to think that they could be a Christian and vote that way.
Yeah.
You have to have a bigger worldview. I'm just telling you that there's just some things that say, hey, I've got to work through this and hear their story and understand. Because what we want to do, here's what we want to do. I want to judge what they think or behave versus saying, hey, I wonder why they came to that conclusion.
Yeah. The why.
And that's a relationship investigation question.
Yeah. I love that. Well, hey, thanks for the conversation today. I read through this and I'm challenged very much so. I think a takeaway just navigating through this for me is when I have the instinct to judge, I know for me, I need to lean in and ask why. Like, why do I have that instinct? And maybe that's even, not to over spiritualize it, but that's a Holy Spirit's invitation to take a practical step to get to know somebody a bit better.
For sure.
And so I would say, hey guys, like whatever, I would say my parting words before it's one, thanks for tuning in and thanks for not bailing. Continue to press in because we need to sharpen one another through tough conversations and through accountability. I think that's good.
For sure. Love you, believe in you.